Hello, I'm Allegra Madsen, the program director at Frameline. I'm a curly-haired woman of color with glasses and a striped shirt. And welcome to Frameline 45. Thank you for joining us today for our Frameline Talks series. Today is My Disability Isn't Your Oscar, and we're focusing on disability representation in LGBTQ cinema and media. Today I am joined by Catherine Kudlick, who will be our moderator for today.
Hi, and thanks, Allegra, and thanks to Frameline for having this panel, which I think is a really important and interesting conversation to be having. I'm Kathy Kudlick, as she said, and I am wearing my finest lavender top with short silver blonde hair, and I have cool glasses. I'm director of the Paul K. Longmore Institute on Disability at San Francisco State University, and also director of Superfest International Disability Film Festival. And we'll talk more about that today, I hope. So I'm going to hand it over to each of the panelists to introduce themselves. And let's start with you, Alex.
Sure, Kathy. Thank you for having me on this panel. My name is Alex Locust. I use he, she, they, all pronouns. I am a light-skinned Black biracial babe, giving you full lion's mane, curly hair, loud rainbow for pride, and nails to boot. I am a glamputee, as one could say. I'm an amputee, big lover of pop culture, media. I've had the pleasure of being a juror for the Superfest International Film Festival for several years now, and really enjoy getting to explore disability in film and media, talking about where we can show up better for Black and Brown, queer, disabled representation in media and in culture at large. I'll pass it to you, James.
Well, thank you so much, Alex. I am James Cadado, and first of all, I just want to say I am grateful to Frameline for including me to be part of this panel today, centering disability experiences and narratives. And so I am Filipino. I am in my 40s, 44. I have short cropped buzz cut hair. I am wearing brown jacket, and underneath that brown jacket is a pink shirt with a Childish Gambino pin. This side, and let's see, my connection to disability. I am actually a latent disability rights activist. I came. I first got introduced to Superfest last year, and I was part of that panel. And it's through my dear friend Stacy Milburn Park, who is no longer with us. She actually passed last year, and I just want to take this opportunity of like remembering them, and because they're the ones that actually compelled me to take up activism within the disability rights community, and that's why I am here today. It's because of their activism and of their dialogue with me, and how I have invisible disabilities, and one of them being HIV positive, and the other one being a person in recovery, and how those two issues within the Black and Brown community, specifically within the Asian American communities, those are very rarely talked about, and those experiences and narratives and stories are rarely seen and heard. And I'm a filmmaker and actor. And I'm obviously going to pass it to Karen, right, Karen?
Hi, everyone. I'm Karen Nakamura. I use she, her, they pronouns. And I'm a Japanese American, middle-aged, genderqueer person. And I speak today from my home in North Oakland on unceded Ohlone land, occupied Ohlone land. My day job is I'm a professor of anthropology and the chair in disability studies at UC Berkeley, and I've been involved in the Superfest Film Festival for about 4 years now, and I really enjoyed the opportunity to see the fantastic films that everyone's making. I'm also a filmmaker myself with 2 films under my belt, and it's been a thought-provoking moment to really think about the opportunities we have to be able to tell the stories through filmic media that we haven't. It's been enormously democratizing, but still there are stories that need to get heard, and we're doing our job to get those stories heard by everyone. So back to you, Kathy.
Okay, great. So we have, it's a great opportunity to talk about ways that disability can inform Frameline, and maybe Frameline can inform Superfest, who knows? But my first question to all of you is, what do you wish people who attend Frameline know, what do you want them to know about disability and cinema? And I will let anybody take it on.
Yeah, I think if I can jump in, I think David Mitchell and Sharon Snyder wrote this great article talking about how disability is often used as this narrative prosthesis. It's used as this way to like hinge, like a character is actually, indicate the character is a bad person with a flaw, and that flaw becomes visible through their disability, and then it needs to be some sort of rectification. Or if it happens with a hero, the same way. And for me, I forgot to mention that, I have psychiatric and neurological disabilities as well as some physical ones. And they are just part of who I am. And it's part of how I exist in the world. I think when I was a kid, one of the most meaningful characters for me was looking at seeing Dr. Carrie Weaver on ER. And what was so fantastic about her was that she used a crutch. And then she came out as queer. But no one really, it's just like she has a crutch. And it wasn't used as some sort of metaphor for her flaw in her character or something like that. It was just that she was a fantastic physician. And that was really meaningful in that sense, to see a disabled character in that way.
Hi, this is James. I'm also going to jump in right now. So yeah, while Karen was talking, all these images and these famous characters with films that growing up that I came across with, and one of the more the one that's really imprinted in my brain is the movie with Cher called Mask, and how that specific disability, right, and how it was. The way that story specifically was told, it almost verges on this moment of trauma porn, struggle porn. It's like this moment of like it definitely like had this moment of let's see how many tears we can squeeze out of these stories, right? And just using those these disabilities as a way to really just evoke emotions without really bringing up the multi three-dimensional lives that we live as disabled folks, right? And I think lately what character that I really enjoyed watching who is disabled is on HBO. It's Mayor of Easttown, and there's a teenage daughter there who is what do you call this with Down syndrome, and she was just treated, this character and the actor was just treated like it was there, but it was also like it wasn't commented and it wasn't highlighted, right? It was just like a fact of life, and these people have adjusted to this wonderful, beautiful person in their family, and not adjusted in a way that's like really incorporating that person's experience into the family's lives, right? And I think that's the for me, being a movie watcher and also being a filmmaker, it's inviting audience to come in to that experience and to really live in that moment, however long that experience is, whether it's a short film or a feature film, right? Being able to like drop into to those really lived in moments of these characters, of these stories. And so I'm just gonna end there because I feel like I'm repeating myself. Alex.
But you're providing me a really good runway, just like Karen did, right? Talking about telling stories. I think that's why media is so important. Is that it's an opportunity to tell stories and share experiences that are outside of yourself, right? And to have this moment of connection with somebody who maybe you never thought you could relate to, or for people who might not have ever seen themselves, right? Like to have possibility models of who you could be or what your life could look like. And it's not lost on me that, we're talking about this within the realm of like a queer festival. And so to have this like plethora of diverse queer narratives, right, is so beautiful and is such a beacon of what I want to see. And it's like, if Superfest is one of the few places where I can turn to get that around disability, that really speaks to like how limited our offerings are. I grew up born with a disability, and I just so rarely saw anything that felt like it offered something new, right? And didn't just rehash these old stereotypes that are not just boring, right, and tried, but harmful in terms of the spectrum of how many lived experiences exist within the disability community. We like Karen said, right, we're getting disabled characters who are props, right, who are vehicles for other characters' growth, right? They're secondary, they're tertiary, they're on screen for a little bit, or like James is saying, for a while, but in really traumatic, violent ways. They're usually white, they're usually straight, they're usually played by non-disabled people, so we don't even get to have disabled people getting jobs to tell bad stories, right? Like, so non-disabled people are kind of just puppeteering this whole experience, when I'm like this untapped wealth of stories of triumph and failure and pain and love and sex and all of these kind of things are left untapped. And then disabled people are left to be treated as if we're like asking for too much, right? Or that we're like, well, it's not that bad, right? And it's like, but all we want is to see ourselves represented by people who are a part of our community, see disabled characters in community with each other, right? Like disabled people being in relationship with other disabled people, enough so that we can have what James is talking about, where disability is so normalized that it's not the feature of their existence. And we can also have people where it's like the entire crux of their story. I think that's where we should be. And it's really disheartening that we're in 2021 still asking for, like, I feel like I'm getting scraps, right? Like I watched Moxie the other night and I was like, okay, so there is a disabled character and she has some one-liners. She's also like still white and I know nothing else about her, right? So these like, we're crawling, and some crawling is good, right? Rolling, crutching, whatever we need, but I'm ready to pick up the pace.
Yeah, can I jump in there? Because I think Alex just lined up a really fantastic point about just the complexity of people's lives. I mean, one of the current buzzwords, of course, is now talking about intersectionality. And, all of us who, I'm Japanese American, I'm genderqueer, I'm queer, I have a disability, multiple disabilities. And I often feel like when we get written into a script, it's like it's a one-liner. And that is the entire sort of corpus. If somebody's blind, it's blind is all they have. If somebody is African American, it has to be up to 11 and something like that. It's and that's I think it was James who was also talking, like hinting towards like blaxploitation films where like black was the only thing you could ever be and stuff like that. And we don't think about, hey, someone who is, genderqueer could also be disabled, or has a physical disability, could also be, non-binary. But they could also be at times, they could also be at times, they could be Japanese American. And at times, something like being Japanese American may come more to the fore than the others, right? All of our sort of complexities interact in complex ways that can't get reduced to sort of a one-liner script description. And I think it's up to filmmakers to really think through how things overlay onto each other. And disabilities come in complexes, as we had mentioned too. So you can, be someone who has CP, but is also deaf. And, and that combination will bring different nuances to the deaf experiences.
That's a very good
Yeah,
point.
Karen.
If I may jump in
Please,
really
James, go.
quickly, because Alex
Yeah.
has definitely like really given me like a lot of food for thought. It's great. We're talking about representation, right? In front of the screen. What's equally important is also is like who's behind the camera and who's writing the stories, right? That's super important as well. So we need to have people working in front of the camera as well as off camera. Who's writing in the TV writers room, who's writing who wrote this piece that's about disabled folks or centering a disabled narrative. Is it another white cis man? Are we having another Simpsons episode, of all like these Yale writers in the TV room writing about ethnic minorities and, just basically creating stereotypes after stereotypes. And that's not helpful. That's harmful. And so that needs to be factored in as well. So, yeah, I definitely agree that, we should definitely, get rid of all this, like, cut out stereotypical type of portrayal of folks with disabilities, right? And I love the fact that the intersectionalities of our experiences is definitely going to help that. And I didn't say I'm queer, but I'm queer. Thanks.
That's great. That's great. No, what you're all saying is so perfect. I mean, it's just exactly what people need to know. And, the other piece of it that's kind of behind all of it is that there's this incredible creativity and, kind of working within like, existing frameworks to change them and to push people out of their comfort zones and to, really get new portrayals in cinema, new kinds of movie making, new kinds of characters. But also the other piece I want to add in is the new forms of accessibility that we can access in these films. So, for example, there should always be captioning. Think about what happens if you are making a film or going to a film where there's audio description or some way that somebody could access the film non-visually, because cinema is as much about sound and dialogue and all of these storytelling as it is about these other things. So I had to get my little bit in there for audio description, and I'm hoping Frameline will become a champion of this alternative movie universe. The other piece I feel compelled to mention that I want Frameline viewers to think about, and people that go to cinema in San Francisco, is the accessibility of movie theaters themselves. And the Roxy just did this major renovation during COVID, and is actually going to come back very, very accessible in ways it never was before, which is so exciting. The Castro, however, is just the opposite. They have been really, really slow. And I hope that patrons of these theaters will understand that people in wheelchairs, people who use wheelchairs and love movies can't access a lot of these spaces where we go to attend films. And I don't know if anybody wants to add to that before I move on to another question, but I just wanted to make sure.
A shout out for service dogs, because often, at many movie theaters, the service dog is stuck in the poor floor where it's like icky with like, sports sodas and popcorn. Luckily, I use a small one, so Momo can jump into my lap. But I really feel for the service dogs that don't have that option. it's an icky experience on the floor down there.
Yep. Yeah. Alex or James, do you want to add anything to the accessibility piece, or should we move on? Or
I would just
can I jump in? Sorry. I just love
Go
what
for
you
it,
said,
Karen.
Kathy, too. Yeah. I want to encourage all the filmmakers who are here to go onto Netflix and listen to a couple of the episodes of some programs that have been designed from the beginning to have audio description. Right? You can easily tell them because the audio description is really perfect. Just go down to alternate sound track, switch on audio description, close your eyes and listen, and you can see it's such a different and profound experience. And as a filmmaker, that should excite you more than anything else. This fact that, hey, I can make two fantastic films that can be experienced two different ways, one visually and one orally. And as a creative person, I think that should inspire you to like think of all of these different layers. I think audio description improves you as the visual filmmaker too, because as you listen through these, really the ones that are done really well, sometimes the visual cues aren't visible, and sometimes they aren't, and you have to really think, what do I do with visual cues as I make my audio description?
Yeah, I was just gonna. I mean, Karen already started to touch on this, but access features are also art. There's an art to them. There is a finesse. There is, je ne sais quoi. Like you have to really like put the effort in, and I think what happens, what I've experienced when people are approaching access features is they treat them as a compliance issue. They treat them as an obligation, and they phone it in. And then they're like, see, it's bad. And I'm like, that's because you didn't do a good job, right? You didn't involve disabled people. You didn't treat it like you didn't treat it with the preciousness that you treat your art. And we can see, right? We can hear that, we can feel that. It's really palpable. And I can say as a testament to Superfest being this like paragon of accessibility from top to bottom, like from every aspect of it, it feels immersive. It feels natural. It doesn't feel like it detracts from the films. It doesn't feel like it takes away. And I think just as James was saying, just in the business of like creating more jobs, creating more opportunities, like involving more disabled people in your access process, right? Like turning to campaigns like Alice Wong's Access is Love, right? Like these are ways that you can really bolster what you're doing and elevate it rather than it just being kind of what like you are comfortable with or what you're used to. Access can take your art to the next level that it hadn't had prior to that depth.
Exactly.
I just want to add,
Kathy,
if I may. I just want to add to the love of
please.
Superfest because that was last year was my first experience with the audio description, and I loved it. It was a definitely different way to experience many films that I saw at Superfest, and it was really, it blew my mind. Like, why is this not happening more often, right? Well, this should be, this should be happening in real time, and without interruption and immediately right away, because it really is a different way to experience visually and orally as well. Thanks.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's great. And there's a saying that people use, they say, build it in, don't bolt it on. So if you start with that creativity geared toward access when you're making a film at the very beginning, it's going to be a lot better than if you just, got to put access in. Oh no, and then you add it and it doesn't feel as authentic as Alex says. Okay, let's to wrap up sort of, what resources do you want to share that would help folks discover new thinking about disability and LGBTQ, specifically those intersections? Maybe a favorite film that did it really well, or a missed opportunity where they kind of could have done it better, or anything you're involved with as kind of a project or some event or whatever you're involved in. So let's see. James, do you want to go first? Since
I'll go first.
Yeah.
just a little bit of background about what I do. So I'm a filmmaker. I'm also an actor, and like I said, I'm a latent disability rights activist. I might even say reluctant disability rights activist. Right? Listen, this is a whole new identity for me, and I'm still unpacking my own ableist attitudes, ideas, internalized ableism. Right? It's only within the past year that I have to really examine what I am and who I am as a disabled person, right? And what that means, right? Because the whole process for me of like, I'm feeling I'm not disabled enough. I don't even belong in this panel because I don't have X, Y, and Z, right? And but Stacy Park saw something in my narrative. We met at a performance writing workshop, and I did not know that I was performing. I was writing, a piece that's actually centering my disabilities, and it was only her listening and watching that performance say, you actually have a story in the disability community. And I was taken aback. And so that's a little bit of background, and I guess that's me saying, I would yield to Alex and Karen for resources because they probably know more than me. But that's I just wanted to share that experience because I think this is also one of the really new one of the stories that needs to be emerged as people age, right? We became disabled, right? And that we will all eventually become disabled. So I'm looking at you, audience member, just thinking who's buff and fit and who's sexy. It's like, I'm not going to be disabled. I'm like, you will. And we will get old and we will get disabled. And so the work really is like, how can we make things accessible now so when we get old, it's even more accessible? Thank you. I keep saying thank you as if I'm answering a beauty pageant question. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. I'll jump in next. So I think it's really key. Alex and James both said the importance of having disabled folks and people with intersectional disability identities, brown and black disabled folks, in front of the camera and behind the camera. And I think all too often, like a casting director will say, well, I don't know anyone who's disabled, so let's just make this main character yet another able-bodied person. Or a casting director will say, but we need to show before the disability and after the disability. And so the only person that can play that is a disabled person. And yet, they'll spend like, 10 million in CGI to take someone's legs away, but they won't say, hey, well, why don't we just spend the 10 million CGI to put the legs back in for the pre-bit, and then for the rest of the film, which is actually longer where they have the disability, we'll just have the character as they are. And so there's no sort of forethought, or they'll say, a producer or showrunner will say, hey, we need a director. They'll say, hey, I know this kid who just produced a really great film, short for UCLA Film School, and that's all they have in their portfolio. Or they did a commercial, and they want to say, hey, there's some disabled directors who have very long CVs of producing disabled films, right? So just go, oh, we don't know anyone, so we don't have any talent, so we can't do it. And we want to really invite everyone to find that talent, to grow that talent. There are agents who specialize in disabled actors. There's just this enormous wealth of talent in various places for deaf actors and actresses. There's enormous depth of talent in Superfest for directors and producers and camera operators. So find those people, get their stories. There's a lot of people who have written scripts and have great portfolios. But it's up to you guys. If you just ask your regular circle friends, you'll get your regular circle friends, and really push yourself to try to find something broader. Because the story, again, we have fantastic stories. We just need to get them out there, and we really need your help to get them out there.
Yeah, I think for me, like, the missed opportunity is really understanding the gravity of what erasure and invisibilization does, right? I think a lot about that documentary Disclosure, and how they so eloquently drew connections between transphobic representations of trans people to the violence that particularly like Black trans women experience. And those parallels aren't the same in the disability community, but I think it's no accident that we have really poor, flat, paltry representations of disability in media, and then I'm having people ask me invasive, violent questions every day in public, right? What happened to your leg? What happened to you? Why don't you wear prosthesis? What's wrong with your leg, right? All of these things. It's like if we saw more amputees, more disabled people in media, like living their best lives, thriving, or at least depicting the trauma and violence that disabled people experience, I think those microaggressions would lessen, because people would have more empathy to draw upon. They'd have more possibility models to connect with. And, it's not just microaggressions, it's how, like there was like medical triaging during this pandemic, right? There's all sorts of violence that the disabled community endures at the hands of ableism. And if we treat these opportunities to depict a whole buffet of stories, we're really kind of ignoring that. So I want to turn people to Sins Invalid. I feel like they ignited my relationship with disability justice. They're queer, Black and brown, disabled artists performing around sex and disability and climate justice and so many incredible things. So to Karen's point, if you're looking for talent, it's there. It's some fertile soil, right? There's just so many beautiful people doing really, really, really incredible work with Sins Invalid. I can't recommend them enough.
Yes. So anybody have any final thoughts? Anything they want to say to close us out?
Oh, I have one final thought. So we're going to be present in one of two ways. Either we're going to be in your films or in the titles, in the credits, or we're going to be outside with placards and protests. So please bring us into your films.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you, everybody. You're wonderful. I just thank you so much for an excellent panel, and check out each of the panelists. They have great things to offer, and come to Superfest also after Frameline. It will be in mid-October. Stay tuned, and all the film buffs in the world will be invited. So everybody. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Frameline.